Hello and welcome back to the Pack of 7 Australia YouTube channel. If you have clicked on this video, I assume you are having trouble controlling your ongoing costs for your Microsoft 365 tenant. If that is the case, myself, peer and Microsoft MVP Christian Buckley look through common scenarios that organizations are facing in regards to ongoing costs and how Rencore can help you solve these issues. Enjoy.
Welcome everyone to this Tuesday's webinar. As you can see, it's all about cost saving in your Microsoft environment. Today, Ryan and Christian will show you around how to drive cost savings in Microsoft 365 today. Without much further ado, I would love to introduce our presenters today. Oh yeah, the reaction today is really fast. Yeah, so we have today Christian and Ryan Wilson in here, and I would love, Christian, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. My name is Christian Buckley. So I am the director of the channel here, the partner management for North America and Asia Pacific. Of course, one of our partners, Ryan, great to have you here. I'm also a Microsoft regional director and 12-time Microsoft 365 apps and services MVP. So I've been in the ecosystem for a long time.
Thank you, Christian. Christian is also my fellow Rencore, right? This webinar. And today we have a guest here. So we're doing this webinar with our partner from Pack of 7, Ryan. Ryan, I would love you to introduce yourself and to tell us a little bit more about Pack of 7.
Yeah, hi, I'm Ryan. I'm the lead solution architect here at Pack of 7 Australia. Pack of 7 Australia are a record-breaking partner of Rencore with the 117 registered attendees. And I specialize in Power Platform and also Microsoft Governance as well.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. And myself, my name is Hönscheid. I'm Partner Success Manager at Rencore, and I will be your host today. So any questions, please, in the Q&A section, and I will try to answer as many of your questions right away. We do have a Q&A section in the end, so yeah, feel free to use that space and feel free to ask questions. We really encourage and appreciate you participating in this webinar. All right then, Ryan, what have you brought us today? We already saw the agenda a little bit, so you will start the webinar with Pack of 7 cost issues. So the reason why we bring in our partners is because they are really near to the clients and can tell you right away what they've experienced with the clients. And so we like to take advantage of that experience that they have. So you will introduce a little bit about licensing, premium licensing, storage limits, and also introduce the maturity model today. And after that, Christian will show you a little bit more about the 4th maturity level and a little bit more about Rencore and what we are actually doing. Yeah. Ryan, first things first.
Yeah,
what have you brought us today?
Yeah, so I'm here today to talk about cost issues in Microsoft 365 and my experience, and also Pack of 7's experience with our clients around these cost issues. So a little bit of a background about Pack of 7. We specialize in Microsoft 365 and Power Platform governance and custom solution development. So typically our governance, what we'll do is we'll go around to our clients. We will use the Microsoft maturity model to analyze the platform that they're currently using, what services they're using, how they're using it, and then we'll try and roadmap out a strategy for them to improve their adoption around the Microsoft platforms and Power Platform in particular, as Power Platform is a hot topic at the moment. Then from this, a lot of organizations are starting to steer towards Microsoft 365 as an enterprise strategy and start moving away from a large range of SaaS applications. And so we help these organizations migrate legacy applications to the Microsoft platform and integrate systems as well into this Microsoft platform. So that could mean creating custom connectors to software that they're using within the enterprise that they still want to align with, and integrating the data maybe into like a Dataverse table where business users can start to report off it, or creating Power Automate desktop RPA solutions to automate offboarding processes that are using legacy software internally. So what we've found when we've been implementing governance for a lot of organizations is that there are a lot of issues. And the top three that I would say are mainly around premium licensing. So users trying to push solutions through the organization, especially within the Power Platform, with premium connectors, for example. They want to automate a certain processes, but that might need the unattended or Power Automate unattended license. So that is one area that organizations are struggling with at the moment. The second would be storage limits. So that's within the Power Platform, the capacity, and also within SharePoint as well. So as you know, Teams is essentially a layer on top of SharePoint. OneDrive is a layer on top of SharePoint. So the more your business starts to pick up adoption within your platforms, the more storage becomes an issue in the future, especially when you're not getting rid of things that you have used in the past and that haven't been used for many years in a lot of cases. And they're just sitting there. There needs to be some kind of strategy to move that data maybe away into an archiving area within Azure or somewhere else. A lot of organizations have different applications and solutions around that, so that's typically up to the clients. And the last one is licensing overview. So if you haven't, or if you don't know, Power Automate, or Microsoft just updated the Power Automate licensing about a month ago. So licensing is always changing, and that is hard to keep track of, especially when you're an organization, you're trying to develop all of these solutions, and Microsoft are changing licensing every few months, especially around particular platforms. So those are the three main issues that we've come across with our clients.
Thank you, Ryan. And I would love to learn what kind of issues you might be facing. So please feel free to use the Q&A section for that, because then we can go through that in the end and kind of take care of those as well. Mm-hmm. Without further ado, Ryan, examples of unused resources.
Yeah. So as I was saying, as your organization starts to adopt Microsoft 365 and starts to utilize it, resources are going to become unused over time. That is inevitable. I mean, you can't really prevent something like that happening. So you need to have a kind of strategy in place around it. So some examples of unused resources can be unused licenses, unused files, as I was saying, so especially large files that are sitting there for many years. They might need some type of archiving solution. Unused Power Automate flows and Power Apps that are, if they're consuming premium licenses but aren't being used anymore. Yeah, there's a whole list there of unused resources. And then you need a kind of strategy to view all of these unused resources and take action on them. So in the next step, well, from this point on, I'm going to be talking about the Rencore Cloud Governance Maturity Model, and what that is, what it is talking about. So essentially what it is, it's a maturity model that evaluates where your current organization is at in terms of your governance strategy. So there are 4 levels, essentially. Level 1 is where a lot of organizations, especially small organizations, are sitting at. So the reporting is manual. The way they gather data is very manual. So they have to go across all of the Microsoft admin centers, I think. Well, I've lost track of how many there are off the top of my head. But if you want to have a look at every part of your organization, there's a lot of admin centers that you need to go through. And that's only covering most Microsoft 365 services as well. There is an admin center for every service. Level 2 is where you begin to automate a lot of your reporting. So this might be PowerShell scripts. So you're utilizing PowerShell to retrieve a lot of data into Excel. And then you can start to build your Power BI reports based on this Excel data. Step 3 is your automated level. So within your organization, maybe you're starting to utilize Power Automate, and you're starting to use connectors or even create custom connectors to a lot of the admin APIs to retrieve all of your data. So your reporting is becoming automated. Your solution to retrieve all of your organization data is becoming automated as well. But again, this will cover very few services or only the services that you are focusing on. And it does leave many services with a bit of dust on them, as they might not be big enough where you might not care about them. But that is an issue with a lot of organizations. And then step 4, obviously this is where you become optimized. Utilize SaaS applications like such as Rencore, where reporting is automated, the solutions are automated, and you're covering all, if not nearly all, Microsoft services.
Thank you, Ryan. This is something that Christian will then introduce you guys. I would be really pleased to know where you see yourselves on which level currently. That's really interesting to know. Always for small companies, maybe you're still all manual. For bigger ones, maybe half automated. Are you using PowerShell scripts? We would love to know that. Yes, going on a little bit further, Ryan.
Yeah, so without any automation or without going up the maturity model, there is going to have, or you will have negative impact on your organization. So obviously you're not going to be knowing what you're using. You won't be compliant with the GDPR risks. There is also, if you're like, for example, on level 3, which is where you're starting to automate, or level 2 or 3, we're starting to automate your solution a little bit. For example, a great one is the Power Platform Center of Excellence Starter Kit. So that's automating a certain area or a certain platform, but you're still not doing that with a lot of your other services as well. And to extend that, to incorporate a lot of data from other services, such as out of the box, it doesn't really cover Power BI. It does require quite a fair bit of maintenance challenges as well. So diving a little bit deeper into the maturity model, level 1. So as I mentioned, this is where you're extracting data from within the admin centers. So you might say, what is the issue with this? As I said, there are many admin centers, so it's not efficient, essentially. You're not getting all of the data as well. Microsoft are only providing you a limited amount of data around your organization, and it is very time consuming as well. You don't have much ability to customize your visualizations. And the data, as I said, is very static, so you can't really incorporate much into the admin center at all, if any incorporation at all. So once you start to find your organization struggling in a certain area, this is where you move, or you begin to move to maturity level 2, and you begin to utilize your PowerShell scripts to pull data from admin APIs, or in some cases, it's built into the PowerShell library or module. And you begin to write this data into Excel spreadsheets or JSON outputs and so on. And then you can begin to report on this as well using Power BI or in some cases, I've seen organizations still reporting with the Excel. I mean, it's not terrible. You can still do stuff in Excel reporting, but I mean, Power BI is a much more powerful tool to report on a lot of this information. So that's maturity level 2, is where you begin to start to automate a lot of this process to retrieve data. Stepping into level 3, you utilize Power Automate. So as I said, this is where the Center of Excellence starter kit, this is what this is essentially doing as well. It gives you a platform to build off. So it's running nightly jobs all the time to synchronize all of your apps and flows that Power users are creating each day. And you can have some governance around that as well. But it is covering a very small section of Microsoft 365, and we know how big Microsoft 365 is, and how often it's growing as well. So maintaining and customizing the solution can be quite painful. You need knowledge, you need manpower, resources. You need to have a review all the time of what data you're getting, what data you need to get. So that can be quite costly in terms of resource management internally. And then finally, well, before we get to the final approach, with these 3 levels, obviously it demonstrates a broken approach. You're not really being proactive. There's no, well, it's not fully automated. The process isn't fully automated. And it's not really providing the data that you need to make well-informed decisions, or IT needs to make well-informed decisions as well. So this is where you get to maturity level 4, and this is where we see, well, a lot of our clients, we often start with the Power Platform. That's usually a starting point for a lot of our clients. They implement governance around that, and then they do find those limitations coming pretty quickly. This is where we point them in the direction of Rencore. So with Rencore Governance, obviously you can quickly report and monitor all of your entire tenant with all Microsoft 365 services. And as I said before, you can free up resources in your team. What we're finding here in Australia is organizations are struggling with resources the most. And this can be, I mean, what would normally be X amount of time you're saving, I would say this is elevated a lot more. So the cost savings from having resources internally it makes a huge impact internally. And what we're finding with clients as well is they typically have a return on investment within 6 months. And without further ado, I'll hand it back over to you, Pia and Christian.
Yeah, you know, one thing I would share there, Ryan. So I was in Seattle at the 365 EduCon event last week, and somebody was coming over, and it was a small team of people, and they're talking about their environment, and he said, well, everything that like a tool does, but I can do everything within the admin centers. It's like, well, yeah. It's like you can go and do all the things that you need to do. I mean, there's more that the tools allow, but the core functionality is like, yeah, you can go and manage that. And he almost he kind of felt like it looked like on his face that he was like, all right, gotcha. I could do everything in the admin console. And I just said, so do you have time for all that as your organization grows? I mean, that's the point. Is can you scale this? Are you watching all of the indicators across all of those, the admin consoles? Are you aware of what's happening? You have things, little things, like somebody leaves an organization. Are you confident that you have track of the licenses, the permissions, the things that they've created, flows that they've authored, where they're midway, they're the next person in the flow that it's now halted because they're gone. All of the assets that belong to them, all of those artifacts, where do they go? Who do they roll up to? Do you have all of that automated? And it's just a very manual kludgy process. And so it felt good to kind of, he was so confident, and to kind of smack him down to reality of what that was. But he said, yeah, I didn't think about it. It's like, it's great if you're in an organization you've got a dozen people, you can probably maintain that. And it's arguable. You could have a very complex environment with a small size organization.
Yep.
But as you grow, and usually IT people are doing a lot of other things besides maintaining these systems. So how do you scale those activities? And so that's where, as you point out, Ryan, very quickly you can start realizing that we're freeing up resources. As Microsoft says, we're able to do more with less because
Yep.
of the automation.
Yeah, and it's as you said, Christian, it's like the little things, you know, it's procuring, talking to HR, like when someone is offboarded, do they know? Do they reassign a license, or is the license just lying around there? So that's a very usual use case, actually. And those things can be prevented. And all manual things are good. It's always good if you can do something manual, but at the same time, you're still human. And are you thinking of all those processes? Do you have the time to go through every single center when someone is leaving the company in order to find out where he is? Are there some flows that might be broken when this employee goes? So those are questions we're facing every day, and I'm sure, Ryan, you face too along the way with your clients.
Yes.
So, Christian, we're all curious now what you have brought us with today. Maybe a little bit more about Rencore, as we haven't talked about Rencore so much before. Yeah, maybe you can tell us a little bit also about Rencore and what is the organization doing that you're working for?
Sure. And yeah, happy to go through and have this discussion. And so it is so I have some slides I'm going to walk through very quickly and show you some of the high level features. Then I'll actually show you what the product looks like. So if you can see my screen, and if it'll go forward, there we go. Now it's moving forward. So some things right off the top, and let me just first say that the out-of-the-box experience with Rencore Governance packs a lot within that. So it's not like you have a bare bones tool and you must go and build everything. We have built hundreds of reports, of policies, of automations, of templates to allow you, once you go, and it's a SaaS solution, so it really is simple as either working with a partner or yourself to point it at your tenant and start the discovery process and pull in the metadata and be able to see a complete inventory of what's happening inside of your Microsoft 365 environment. But you have things like what you see on the screen here. You have licenses with unused seats, licenses for those premium licenses that are out there, licenses that are assigned to disabled user accounts. I mean, so some of the things that you can do, again, out of the box, go and look at and I'll show you this dashboard, the cost dashboard, and right away say, are we paying for things that there's no user there, like they've left the organization, or we've given permissions, extended permissions, more expensive licenses to users, and we can see that they've not been active in those spaces for 30, 60, 90 days. You can set up an automation to alert you when there is a site that has exceeded 90 days, for example, with no one accessing that site. Hey, is that something we need to go and archive? Or is the purpose of that site, does it make sense anymore? Sprawl is one of those things where it's good and bad. I always say sprawl is good because it shows that people are using the technology. They're in there and active. But it's bad because we often let it get out of control. And then it's not just the cost of the licenses, or as Ryan talked about, the storage costs of all this content, but it's also the intellectual property that is striped across all these locations, which then provides more risk to the organization. So you want to also control the data growth. And so I'll talk about this like very quickly. So again, some of these out of the box reporting, you can see I can go and monitor an individual site collection. I can look at it across multiple sites and site collections as well and monitor it at scale. I can look at the actual files to see if, where are people active, what's actually happening in these environments. Look at the teams. Look at the app usage to see what are people actually using within the environment. To also go in and look at the mailboxes to understand, because this is a very common problem where you have organizations that are trying to tightly manage the storage around email, and that they're constantly having to go in and help a user clean up, because we're in this world now. Nobody throws away anything. We don't delete things anymore. We might need it later. So that's something, if you find that you're constantly having to go and where work is halted, instead you can automate where, as limits are being reached but not yet passed, you can get alerted, so you can have that conversation with users about cleaning that up or giving them some additional space. So you have that. Flows is another one that's important that's out there. Depending on if you're wide open and allowing people to use Power Automate and create their own solutions, which is fantastic. We don't make judgment calls or whether you have a lockdown process or if it's wide open and you allow users to do that. But you might want to have some degree of governance around those solutions. Be aware of who's creating them, where are they? Again, as Brian pointed out, there are additional licenses, that costs that are out there. And if people are creating things that are not being used, you might want to go shut those things down, clean it up, get it organized. Another reason why you want to have tighter governance around Power Platform. So we manage Power Automate and Power Apps, the usage and the activity, is so that if somebody builds something, again, if I build something for my team of 7-10 people, that's fine. But if then somebody in the leadership team is like, well, that's fantastic, we should scale that out, there should be a governance discussion, a review around, hey, what data is this actually accessing? Can it be scaled? Was it architected in a way that allows it to be shared and scaled? And so you can't have those conversations if you don't have that data, if you're not aware of what's happening with those environments. Then, of course, the Canvas apps that you're building with Power Apps, tracking where those things are, whether they're being used. OneDrive is another thing. We provide different dashboards in there by product. We allow you to do a deep dive, and I'll show you this in the product too, where I can go in that inventory view very quickly, look at a user. Here we've got Ragnar's profile up there. Let's put him on the spot. What are all the objects that he has access to or that he has created? What are all the checks, the policies that are applied to the sites that he has management over? So I'm going to go through and show you some of those things. Another important aspect of what Rencore Governance does is it provides that provisioning control. Here's another important way to drive down costs, is by, if you go in and you say, for example, within Teams, we have a standard way that we do project-based teams. So we want a similar look and feel, similar assets. We have project managers, we have marketing people, we have salespeople that access, and that they know that they go into any project, there's the same tabs, there's the same channels, so that we have consistency across those things. You have the ability to go and create templates for that project. Maybe you have internally product sites or services, or then you have like internal initiatives. So you might create a separate template for each one of those, all of which you've applied. You've said, here are the information management, like the life cycle data around this site and the content within it. Here's the permissions, here's the labeling, here's all of the settings for that. Here's the approval process for each of those things. So the end user then can go in, and where they go into Teams and want to create a new team, they can select from the 3 templates that you've built from the admin side here and published out there. And from that, they can you have an approval process where it goes to their manager, maybe goes to IT as well. So you could have a more complex approval process, and then it generates that. So that the guardrails are in place when people are creating sites. Of course, you can always request a custom team, request a custom SharePoint site, whatever those things are. But the majority of what people are asking for, you have it behind that governance firewall. that you're reviewing those things. So some of the automated governance things. So again, these are policies and reports that we've created so that you can go and leverage these. Everything is customizable. And I'll show you again that in the tool here in a second. And what's nice about this with the automations as well. So an automation might be as simple as if we're, as I used the example earlier, if mailboxes are reaching the upper limit, notify me before it hits that. If people are getting up there, show me who's going to hit the limit in the next 30 days and then send me an alert. Or you could have something very complex. You can build an automation as you're offboarding employees, somebody's leaving the company, where it could go in and review all of the inventory and automate much of that process to reassign everything that they own up to their manager, so that there's somebody who has ownership over their flows, over their artifacts within the tool. And then, of course, to go and create that automation, it's this very simple flow builder, grabbing the components that you want to go in there and do. And let me do this really quick. I should be able to just pull this up. There we go. Can see that? All right. I tried to overlay it exactly where the slides were. Are you able to see that? The product?
Yes, thank you,
Ryan?
Christian.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yep.
Just want to make sure I'm sharing correctly. So here, this is what it looks like. So again, out of the box, you go and you point at your tenant. This is exactly what you'll see. You'll see the primary features across the top. We've got this dashboard view, and by default, we have this tenant overview. You can make this whatever you want it to be, but we have these other out of the box template or these dashboards like the cost dashboard. So I've gone in, here are the things that I'm interested in. I want to see, okay, here's based on those that are disabled user accounts. If I go and remove that license, I could be saving 1,700 euros a month. So I can very quickly go and dive into each one of these things. But you can also go in, we've got dashboards for things like adoption. I love the external access. This is another one where organizations sometimes don't realize that they're paying for things that they shouldn't. There's been organizations that have gone in and provided licenses, paying for licenses for external users to do other things. And those external users haven't been in the system for over 90 days. Stop paying for those licenses.
Also a great security hole, right?
Yes.
That you mention it.
Well, yeah, we're talking about, it's easy to talk about licenses you're paying for or the data, the storage costs, but it's hard to go in there and add that quantitative, the cost, the risk around your intellectual property. So that's something
that is something else. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother discussion around security. So again, reports, we have out of the box reports. You can go and modify any of these. Of course, you can add a report. You can build a custom report right here on the fly. We have this inventory view where when it does the discovery, when you point our SaaS solution at your tenant, it goes and starts pulling together all the metadata. And this is something where I could go in and say, I want to go look at a specific user. I want to see what, just like I shared that earlier, looking at Ragnar's, I want to go in and look, what is this person doing? They've got 4 subscriptions. What are the related objects? Are they compliant in the tools? This person, it's all green, so you can get in and get to these other advanced features. It's very easy. What I love about the inventory view, sometimes you know exactly what you want to go and look at. Somebody says, I'm having problems with this SharePoint site or this list or library, and you just go jump into that thing. I want to look at this, this SharePoint site. I want to go look at my OneDrive. All right, you can go right to that location, and it's not just a dumb report. All of these are actionable reports so that you can go in and see that somebody's violating a policy, see what it is, take action right from Rencore Governance. You have, again, all of the policies.
For those ones of you, sorry to interrupt you there, who want to trial that one out, I just put in the link to our trial in the chat box. So it's for free. You can just click on the trial, scan either your tenant or use our demo tenant, and see what is Christian showing you right away.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. The full demo is all part of that. So if you point at your tenant, Like I've got it pointed at I've got it as an MVP. I've got my MVP tenant that I use for demos. I have it pointed at that, but I utilize the demo tenant. But here I can go in and look at from the compliance, all the policies that are pre-built, access reporting. So this is an area where we found where so many of our customers were going in and building themselves. They wanted to do daily or weekly audits of certain things. What's happening with flows? What's happening with these SharePoint sites? So instead, we built the feature right into it. So you can go and very quickly add these access reviews. And we have this library of templates that, again, you can use it out of the box. You can customize it for your site, or you can create a custom access review. Provisioning. Today, we offer provisioning for Teams. We have SharePoint coming very quickly, but again, we have the out-of-the-box. Here's the Teams templates that you can go and leverage, or you can go and create a custom Teams template, deploy that, and we have an end-user tool called Rencore Nova that allows them like one interface. It actually pins to the left rail in their environments. And they can make their requests. They can see all of the requests that have been made. Is you as a manager, you'll see all the requests that have come in where you need to approve or reject those, teams, new teams creation process.
Really, really good that you're showing that, because there's just a question in the chat. Maybe you read that already.
I did not.
There is a large organization with multiple teams, and to managing that has become a big task, the attendee writes here. And is it a good idea now to introduce a template or some sort of approval process? And which one do we have here, and what can we share about that one?
Well, it's never the wrong time to add in a template. So
it's never too late.
Yeah, or Ryan, if you had experience with that, but because there's no starting point for governance. Like you're never going to, rarely do you have that opportunity. You walk into a company, you have nothing deployed yet, and you're going to put out all of those strong governance policies and procedures and then start using it. Never happens. It's a dream world.
Yeah. Same as Power Platform is a great example. No one ever implements governance before they start making things. It's always you're implementing governance and changing your governance strategy on the run. So it's never too late to implement or introduce new business processes around your governance.
Yeah, so there's no right or wrong way of doing that. Like I use the example of, so I used to build project management organizations as a consultant. And so I worked with companies and go and build a PMO, and I would try to standardize them on that. It's like a similar concept where for the templates, I use the example of you've got, project related teams, you have product related, or services, depending on what your company does. Initiatives were broad company initiatives, and those are three template ideas. And so you might, again, you might standardize what that look and feel is. I had one client a few years back where, again, every one of their product sites looked exactly the same. They had a place for meeting notes. It was where like a channel where all those discussions were. They had all this product schematics and information on another channel. So it was so that you knew going into any one of those templated sites exactly where to go to get the information you needed. And this was a company, it was a pharmaceutical company. They had hundreds of products. And so they had a site for each one of those, but with a similar build, an outline. And so for them, provisioning was critical to building out their products. Hopefully that answered the questions. The last thing I just wanted to show you here was, again, on the automation. So here's something where, again, we've built the template for the automations. As I kind of showed here, you can go in and create that custom automation. It's really just that simple flow. So depending on what you want to go in and do, opens up, you can then build and say, hey, here are actually the steps. Here's the triggers. Here's the actions that I want. And so you can build some very simple automations. Somebody violates a policy, notify me. Or very robust, advanced automations so that it can handle some of those things. So a lot of what you do from an administrative standpoint, and probably this is the good time for me to close that, go back to this view. Because what are the common use cases that we hear when we talk to our partners and our clients? It's right here. We try to handle as much of this out of the box. But then, of course, so much of this, when you go into the deeper details of decluttering it or setting up, creating some of the automations, and that's where, again, we have partners like Pack of Seven that can help you to go in and build these things, build these repeatable processes. So there are things that you could do on your own. But again, just like there's a lot I can go and figure out and do within the admin centers, or I can get help, a tool and experts, so I can get much better at it much quicker and speed up that process, speed up that learning. But decluttering, so cleaning up your environments, again, I think sprawl is a positive. You just need to have governance on the back end. Cost optimization, user offboarding, which I talked about. Somebody leaves the organization, you want to automate as much as that as possible to make sure that, again, you can go in between the 12, 15, whatever we're up to of admin centers now, and make sure that you've removed every remnant of that user that's no longer with the company and reassigned content and permissions. But what tends to happen is that we miss one or two things. And so by automating that process, you don't miss anything. Security audits, security and audits, that process is so important. Cleaning up your data before migration. I've been involved in migrations for most of my Microsoft career, going back to 2005. And I'll tell you, if you migrate garbage, you'll have garbage in the new place. So as much as you can clean up beforehand is great. And I've talked about provisioning, lifecycle management we could do with the templating. Productivity and adoption is another great space. There's so much that you can see. What are people actually using? What are they actually doing? And so you can save money there by extending, like, why is this one organization, this one business unit doing so well, performing so well? Let's look at their collaboration habits. Let's look at the actual data. What can we leverage? What can we learn from that and go take that to other parts of the organization? So I know that's a lot that I covered there. I don't know if there's any other questions. Yeah.
Yeah, do you just want to jump in? There was a question earlier that I just want to quickly answer. Could you provide some information, highlights about archiving solutions in Azure? So SharePoint, I should say, storage can get quite expensive. So what we often see with organizations is they start to move towards blob storage within Azure and using the archive tier. And what you can do with Rencore as well is, say, for example, you find a site that hasn't been used in 2 years. This might be pushing the automation to the limits, but you can use your automation and then even call a Azure function as well. So if the built-in functionality isn't built within Rencore, you can use the automation within Rencore to call an Azure function and do a lot of this stuff your own as well. So if you have this complex solution where you want to archive a SharePoint site somehow to an archive tier blob storage and move the files out of there into this blob storage as well, you can do all of that yourself within this Azure function, and Rencore can integrate with it as well. So hopefully that answered that question.
Yes, thank you for that, Ryan. I have had some questions along the way as well. So everyone who wants to maybe connect via LinkedIn, some of you already done that. So thank you for that, and thank you for your questions there if you don't want to have them published. So one question was if Rencore is a live monitoring tool, Christian.
Yeah, so it's not live real time. It's not storing that data. So it will go out as there's changes and we'll pull that data across. So it's not pulling the actual data and the content, it's the metadata that's around that environment. So it draws that, pulls that out on a regular basis from your using the Graph API.
Yeah, so Rencore, Microsoft doesn't provide us a possibility to pull that live data. So we're working with that momentarily. What was also a question was whether when clients get the demo or get Rencore Governance, whether the gallery that you just showed us, Christian, was part of that. So like the checks gallery that we saw at Teams.
Yes. Everything
So-
that you saw, that's all part of the out-of-the-box experience. And so there are, so it is something that, again, when you start, if you start the discovery process, so as it's starting to pull data over from using the GraphB API from your environment and loading that into our SaaS solution, it'll start populating all of those dashboards, all of those reports with your data. So that's just something that, again, you can go in there as you start playing around. If you go in and look at the logic behind the reports around the policies and say, that's almost what I want, and then you can tweak it. You can rename it, create new, and leave the out of the box alone, or customize it and make it your own.
Yeah, so the solution Rencore Governance really grows with you guys. So every single question, every feedback that we're getting, we're trying to implement that into the solution to make it available for further clients as well. So there will be updates along the way, and you will be using more and more checks along the way.
One other benefit of working with a partner like Pack of Seven is that they've had more experience working with it. You can actually export and then import. If they go and they build a customization, they build a dashboard with a bunch of custom reports that they work with, they can also share those with their customers. So yeah, you can, if you're an organization, if you have multiple tenants and want to manage, it's all multi-tenant as well. So you can easily move in between those environments. So I don't know if anybody in the audience has multiple tenants that they're managing, but you can do that as well.
Yes. I don't have, so we already answered the question where Rencore is getting the data from the Graph API. The other question was how to reach us and how to reach also Ryan from Pack of Seven. Maybe Ryan, you can answer that for you guys best.
Yeah, well, many ways to reach me. I'm always on LinkedIn. That'll be the first way. You can always reach out to me, message me on LinkedIn. I'm online pretty much every day. My email should be, I can even put in my email into the chat as well. You can always send me an email. Happy to hear feedback as well about the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to send them through to myself or Rencore. And yeah, LinkedIn or email.
Yes. Thanks a lot. So any other question? I don't know whether the question that just popped up in the chat is related to our demo, but maybe if you have any more specific questions to that, then just write us and we can take a look at it together. Because we're a little bit over time, so thank you for staying in here for 5 minutes longer. For me personally, it has been a blast because I learn every day. I learn so much also during those webinars and during the questions that you're having more about the product and about problems you're facing. So thanks a lot for that one. I leave the last sentence maybe to our partner Pack of Seven to close down this webinar. But before that, maybe Christian, your last words for today to close this round.
Yeah, just again, if there's any questions, reach out to Ryan or myself. We're happy to do that. I'm always happy to connect with people on LinkedIn as well, so you can easily find me out there.
Yeah, and one last point I just want to make as well, or reiterate, is it's never too late to improve your governance. Governance is something that never ends. You can never, well, it's never perfect. And you're always trying to improve it and figure out areas where you can improve certain areas within your governance approach. So, yeah, don't stop. That's what I should say. Yeah, thank you very much to Rencore and everyone attending. And I hope to hear from you all soon.
Yes, thanks a lot, guys, and have a lovely evening or day or wherever you are. Good night. And yes, it was a blast, and thank you for joining.
Thank you very much for watching this episode. Now, if you're interested in Microsoft Power Platform and how you can govern and control it, check out this webinar I did here with ACS. Otherwise, if you're interested in RPA, check out this series here. Or if you're interested in SharePoint, this series here. See you next time.